In this video, we're checking out a secret stash of Mopar muscle cars that is completely hidden from civilization. We got 20 Plymouth Barracudas of all varieties. They're all early cars. We've got notchback cars, fastback, convertibles, and there's even a Plymouth Cuda dirt track car that you're going to want to check out. Now, this is definitely a private collection. The owner gave us full range to go shoot whatever we wanted to shoot in his collection, but we're not allowed to tell where it's at. We're not allowed to provide his name or anything like that. And his yard is full of projects and parts cars and pieces and just lots and lots of stuff that we're going to get into right now. So let's start walking down at the bottom of the hill and make our way up to the top. We're starting off with what appears to be a late 40s Dodge Business Coupe. Now, these things were not necessarily attractive back in the day. They had kind of odd proportions from the factory, but a lot of customizers use these things because there's just like a blank canvas. It looks like the top is already chopped. They have some pretty cool lines once you cut them up and kind of move some things around. So this is probably a project for somewhere down the road. We'll see another one of these later on in the collection. Just stay tuned for that. Now, here's one of the non-Mopar pieces in the collection, an old bump side Ford. It's got a Holmes wrecker bed on it, and you can tell this thing has been used quite a bit. I love old station wagons, and it doesn't get much cooler than this. This is a Chrysler, and check out the front end. The grille and bumper and all the trim on this car is in excellent shape. You can see the windows are all there. The sheet metal looks pretty good on this thing too. It's got those cool handles on the back. I guess that's for the kids to get in the back. And look at that trim running down the center of the top. This thing has got some really cool details and could make a cool hot rod. Now, here's an old drag car. This is a Dodge Demon, which is pretty hard to find. You can see it's been painted a few times, been blue at some point, it's red, it's got a yellow fender on it. It's got some rust in the back. It's got some typical issues there. Check out the old decals. This thing has got a little bit of history. I'm not sure exactly how long ago it was raced. It's got a cool Keystone wheel on the front. It's definitely got some issues. I can see it's kind of leaning to one side. It looks like it might have some suspension issues over here on this side. Not sure what's going on there. Maybe a torsion bar problem. As we made our way up the hill towards some of the other muscle car stuff, you can see some 80s and 90s cars, and there's even a Jeep in here, a couple of trucks and things like that, and a really cool looking go-kart that they've built. You can see it's got some giant tires on the back. Not sure how well that would perform, but looks pretty cool anyways. So we got an old 80s Chrysler. Looks like the only foreign car is this Toyota Camry. Got an old truck cab, Chrysler Sebring, Dodge Dakota, just a little bit of everything on this row, but this is where it starts really getting interesting. We look over here on this part of the yard, and we start off with a fastback Barracuda. This thing's obviously got a little bit of performance or drag racing history or something. It looks like it's got a different rear end under it with some big tires on the back. No engine at this point, but it's a really solid body. Looks like something that'd be a good project car to start with. And these cars are just extremely hard to find. But this is one of 20 Barracudas that are on this property. So let's keep walking and find some more of these things. But before we get into the other Barracudas, we got to look at some of these other Mopars. Starting with this Dodge Polaris station wagon. This is probably like a 66 or 7. I'm just guessing. You might have to help me with that in the comments. But look at how solid this thing is. It's got a little bit of surface rust on the top side. Some might call it patina, some might call it rust, whatever. But it's got a cool look to it. You can see the rear end of this thing is complete. The tail lights are in good shape. The trim is in good shape. This thing could be cleaned up and put back on the road without a whole lot of trouble. Sitting next to it is a pretty rare piece. This is a Plymouth Valiant convertible. You don't see very many Plymouth Valiant convertibles. You see a lot of 4-doors, some 2-door posts, but the convertibles are really rare and they just didn't last very long. And you can see this one's got a little bit of rust, but it's not as bad as most. This one could be put back on the road. Obviously, it's going to need some floor pans. It's going to need some stuff on the bottom side of the car to get this thing back up structurally sound, but still a very cool piece. Every collection's got to have an old school farm truck. This one's a long bed Dodge, and aside from a couple of flat tires, it looks like this one could be driven just about any time. It looks like you could just pour a little gas in the carburetor and fire it up. Sitting next to it is a Dodge Dart. This one's got a pretty cool hood on it with a big scoop. Underneath it, we can see there's an air cleaner in there. Not sure exactly what combination is in this car, but it looks like it's got some potential. Here's another Barracuda. This one's got a scoop on the hood, a little custom sheet metal scoop. And you can see this one's starting to show a little bit of rust. It's had some primer on it, and that primer is starting to fade away. It's got some structural rust on the bottom side. The old tire has given up, but still the bones are there. You just won't find a car with cooler lines in these early fastback cars like this. Now, some of the cars had covers or tarps on them. We didn't disturb very many of them. You can see right here, this is what appears to be a 63 Dodge. I'm thinking that's what it is, 63 Dodge. And this one's a 4-door. Looks like sitting next to it is another 4-door. And I'm thinking that's also a 63 Dodge. And here we've got a 63 Dodge 440. And this is kind of like their mid-size, middle-of-the-road type car. 2-door hardtop. You can see it's got a trailer hitch on it. And you can see that Tennessee tag, which tells you maybe that we're in Tennessee, but not going to get specific on this collection for sure. It's got some aftermarket wheels on it. You can see the paint is in pretty rough shape. A lot of surface rust on the top sides. A little bit of rust on the bottom side too. But still a pretty neat looking car. You could get this thing running, make it sort of like a beater or a rat rod, leave the paint like it is, and get some attention one way or the other. Now here's one of my favorite pieces in this collection. This is a Plymouth Cuda dirt track car. Now you can look inside of here. This thing has got a full roll cage in it. It's got a sheet metal dash. You can see this is a gutted out race car. Pretty much everything on the inside of this car is race only. You can see the cage. This car is not made to have doors that function. You can see they've filled in every possible place with sheet metal, like the side marker lights, the headlights, the door handle holes. All that stuff's been filled in with sheet metal. It's got a big push bumper on the front. This thing could make a really cool dirt track car for a vintage class or something like that. But oddly enough, you know, there's no engine or anything, but oddly enough, the fenders haven't been cut out or radiused in any big way. It doesn't look like this thing is all that rusty, even though it's been sitting outside. It's pretty wild to see something like this because you just don't think about a high-end E-body Mopar muscle car being cut up and made into a race car. People just don't do that anymore. So obviously this was done back in the day, maybe back in the 70s or 80s, not real sure, but it's still a really cool piece to look at. Next up, we got a Dodge Challenger. And you just rarely see these E-bodies in this type of condition where they're out in a field or out in somebody's yard. Most of these things have already either been scrapped or they've been restored. So seeing one that's unrestored is pretty rare. This one's got a cool deck lid on it with a spoiler. It's got raised white letters and mag wheels on it. Pretty cool. It's missing a door, missing some sheet metal on the inside. You can see it needs floor pans for sure. Then it's got this old race car hood on it. I'm assuming that's fiberglass. It's a pin-on hood. It's got the 2 snorkels, but it doesn't look like they're functional, and it looks like it may have had a big snorkel scoop on it at some point in its life. You can see the rest of the car is definitely buildable. You'd have to do a lot of work on the quarters, probably needs trunk pan, all the floor pans and stuff like that replaced, but it's still a neat piece. Sitting next to it is an extremely rare car. This is a 1969 Plymouth Barracuda convertible. Now in 67, 68 and 69, they made 3 body configurations on these Barracudas. They made the convertible, a notchback coupe, and a fastback. And these convertibles were definitely the most rare, and this was the last year of production of this particular body style. So only 1,440 of these convertible Barracudas were built. This one has been in a really bad front end collision. You can see the front apron, the frame rails are killed on this thing. But this is a buildable car. You can see the rest of this car from the firewall back is definitely usable. Obviously, it's going to need floor pans. It's going to need some attention on the bottom side of everything. But this would be a very valuable, very desirable car if it was back on the road. Sitting next to it is a custom Dodge pickup. You can see it's got a very custom paint job on it, probably from the 80s or 90s. A lot of purples and oranges and blues used in that. Obviously somebody straightened this thing up and gave it this custom paint job at some point in its life, so it was a pretty straight truck. Front end looks pretty good on it. Not sure exactly what's under the hood, or if anything. So here we've got a 67 Plymouth Barracuda. This is the notchback coupe variety, and you can see inside of there, it's pretty solid. Definitely got some stuff taken apart. Steering column, dash is taken apart, but a pretty solid car. You can see these 67s and tell them apart because they don't have any marker lights on the sides of the car. So here we've got another 69 Plymouth Barracuda convertible. Remember, only 1,440 of them are built, and this guy's got 2 of them right here so far. We haven't even seen his whole collection yet. So this is another one. They've got it covered up partially, uncovered it a little bit so we could see the side of it here. Definitely a very buildable car. They've put a different front end on it. This thing's been painted a few times, it looks like, but the guts are there. Everything's there. It's got some floor pan issues, but pretty much complete as far as the main pieces of this car. Obviously it needs interior, it needs carpet, it needs seats, door panels, it needs all that, but the main elements of this super rare car are all there. Here we've got a 68, see the little marker lights? We've got a 68 Plymouth Barracuda, no engine, no brakes, nothing like that. This thing's been taken apart, but the body is all there. The body is decent. You can see a little bit of rust up here in the seam where the roof and quarter panel are put together. But again, this car's all there. You can see the back bumper's got a little tweak to it, got a little bit of issues there, a little bit of stuff going on the quarter panel on this side, but a very buildable car, especially for something that you just don't see very often. You don't see these 67 through 69, which I guess would be second generation Barracudas. You just don't see them very often. Here's another 69. This one's green in color. Looks like it still has an engine in it just based on how it's sitting. They've got the roof covered up on it. I don't know if it might be missing a back glass or the windshield or something like that, but it appears to be of the notchback variety. You can see this one's got a couple of bumper stickers on it and not a tremendous amount of rust. You can see that lower quarter's got some rust, but not bad considering most of these cars rotted out pretty quickly. Now here's a fastback car. This one is a 68 and looks like it's pretty well taken apart. They've taken a lot of the suspension out of it. You can see the disc brake dangling there under the front. And you know, it's sitting up on jack stands. It's covered up, so I'm assuming it doesn't have a windshield or something like that that's making them keep this thing covered. Sitting next to the 69 is a really cool DeSoto. Look at all that trim, those tail lights. Everything on this car looks like it's original. Now obviously it's got some rust, it's got a lot of surface rust on the top side. Super cool, love the front ends on these cars, the grille, the big bumper, and a lot of these cars, I'm assuming all of these cars had some type of Hemi in them, the smaller cubic inch Hemis. Not quite as much power as the Chrysler Firepower Hemi, but still a very neat piece, and these cars are getting extremely hard to find. Here's another Plymouth Barracuda fastback. This one looks like a 67 model. And it's pretty complete. Looks like the door handles are missing. Some of the trim pieces are missing. But, you know, finding one of these cars that is as complete as this one is getting to be pretty hard. But this one's got plenty of rust on the top side, surface rust, but really not bad on the bottom side. Just like the rest of these cars, it's really a very fixable car. This one's got slicks on it, so I don't know if this one may have been a drag car at some point, or if maybe these were just some roll-around tires they stuck on it. But still, it's all hanging together and it looks like a pretty buildable car. Now this one was all covered up. I didn't want to bother them to take the tarp off of it. I'm assuming that means that some of the glass is missing on this car and they don't want a bunch of water getting in there. Not real sure exactly of the history on this thing. It appears to be a fastback Barracuda, just judging by the shape of the tarp, but not real sure. As we make our way further up the hill, we see a couple of cars here that look like late 40s and early 50s, and Dodge, Chrysler, and Plymouth made these sedans and coupes in all different varieties. For a few years, they made a ton of them. Certainly the slickest car in this collection is sitting in kind of a makeshift garage. This is a fastback Barracuda that's got a slick paint job. It's got Krager wheels on it, white letter tires, spoiler on the back. This has got new trim, good bumpers, the glass is good. I mean, this is truly a slick, show-ready car. And it's sitting here pretty much ready on the outside, but it looks like it needs some interior work. May need a little bit of finishing touches as far as some more trim and bumpers and things like that on the front, but still a very presentable car. Now the coolest driver in this guy's collection is this 1969 Dodge Coronet 440. Now this thing has got the perfect patina, the right amount of rough, weathered paint, a little bit of rust here and there, but the coolest part to me is they actually completely swapped the roof on this car. This car had a vinyl top on it originally, like many of the Mopars did, and that causes rust. I mean, there's just no other way around it. And they ended up swapping the entire roof out from another car, and it doesn't even look out of place. I mean, the little bit of primer that's on there, it looks like it belongs on this car. And this is a car that they can just hit the key and go. It's got the perfect amount of rust and roughness to look cool and get attention, but still get you down the road. Next, it looks like we got about a 61 Chrysler Windsor. These things got the cool canted headlights. They've got fins on it that are huge. And this was actually a couple years after the peak of the fins as far as like Cadillac and Chevrolet and things like that. This thing's got fins that go all the way from the front door to the back of the car. Absolutely cool looking body design, and this thing is pretty much complete. Then we've got another pre-muscle car Mopar here. This is like maybe a 59 Dodge, those big tail lights, and then we got a puppy dog here we're gonna pet. But this car is super cool looking. Again, very complete. Looks like maybe the motor's out of it, but all the glass is there, all the trim is there. The giant front bumper and grille and headlight bezels and trim, it's all there. And of course that leads us to two more Plymouth Barracudas. Both of these are fastback cars. The blue one looks like a 68. It's got the little side marker lights. And then the other one over here is purple and primer and surface rust. It's a lot of different colors. It appears to be a 69 model. It's got Krager wheels on it, got a cool stance. A lot of cool pieces in this collection. And there's another 63 Dodge. Looks like a pretty good front end on it. It is a four-door car, but very presentable. Next to it is a Dodge Dakota, and then yes, another Plymouth Barracuda. This one is another fastback car. Appears to be a 68. It's got Krager wheels on it. It's been painted on quite a bit. Looks like some red, white, and blue. Not sure exactly what the paint scheme was originally, but definitely looks cool. And then on the back row, there's tons of engines and parts, wheels and tires, a little bit of everything back here. And of course, some more Barracudas. Now some of these are covered up. Some of them are damaged pretty badly. These are definitely just parts cars back here. But we'll walk around and see some pretty rare pieces. 68 fender, we've got an old transmission there. Fenders hanging up, fenders stacked up, and then this notchback car, you can see that it's had a pretty rough time. Looks like maybe a tree fell on it or might have been in a rollover accident, not sure. But it's serving its purpose as a parts car. And this next one is pretty wild. It looks like it's on a four-wheel drive frame. Maybe a Jeep, not real sure exactly. Dodge Dakota maybe. I don't think they would put it on a Ford or Chevrolet frame. They're not that type of people. But you can see it's got some rust on the bottom side. One thing I didn't notice until my second lap around the car is it's actually got a fiberglass front end on it. So this thing probably has a little bit of drag racing history. You don't see a lot of people using a fiberglass front end on a Barracuda like this. It's not a real common application for fiberglass parts. So pretty rare pieces, even though they're a little rough around the edges. Sitting next to it is another 69 fastback car. This one's got a few pieces taken away from it. The interior is pretty much empty aside from just buckets of parts. Fender's just kind of hanging on it. This one definitely needs some work, but it's also a very good parts car. The final car on this row is a 69 Plymouth Barracuda. This one's got some slotted mags on it. You can see primer and paint, various colors. We've got a National Rifle Association sticker, that's cool. And you know, just piles of parts back here, doors and fenders and hoods, just everything you can imagine for these second generation Plymouth Barracudas. Now they had one more Plymouth Barracuda that was just tucked over here in the corner, and you couldn't really even tell it was there until you got up on it. So this is just basically the bones of a Barracuda convertible. So the cowl panel, the front aprons, the floor structure, it's all there, but there's not much else for this car. It's pretty much just this piece of a car that can go towards building another one. You know, if they've got a car that's damaged or whatever, they can use this one for parts. So remember in the beginning of the video, we showed you kind of a rough old late 40s Dodge business coupe. Well, here's what the end result of one of these cars can be. This one is a really cool pro street build. So it's got huge tires on the back, it's tubbed out, narrowed rear end, and got a big scoop on it. And these things, they already have cool proportions if they're done right. And this one's got a pretty cool look to it. Flat black with some cool stripes on it. And inside it's got a 1960 instrument cluster and a very customized dash that they made themselves. A really neat looking piece. And it looks like something you could hop in and go to the local cruise night without a tremendous amount of work. This is like my favorite type of collection because I would have never known this even existed without some help from some guys who knew the area and knew these people. So really, really awesome. I appreciate the owners of this collection for letting me take a look and letting me show you guys. And I appreciate the buddy who helped me kind of put all this together. So really neat collection of stuff, cool, super rare cars. And even though they're sitting outside, this guy knows what he's got. He has collected some serious Mopar hardware and he's pretty proud of it. So pretty cool to see this collection. I hope you guys enjoyed it.